and every week on Saturday mornings, West African time, we review the news and talk about how it affects your pocket. And so, if you're just joining us for the first time, I want to say welcome. And also, I'm excited today because we have a guest. Yay! Our guest today is Tony. Tony is a professor. He just not yet put the prof in front of his name. And he's an amazing member of our community, which we'll talk about as we go along. And so we will just go right straight into it. Thank you, Tony, for joining us. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, Ola. Thank you for having me, and good
Mhm.
morning to our viewers and listeners as well.
Yeah, so let's go right into it. So we're starting from global news. And the US Senate announced a plan for a 1 million unit Bitcoin purchase program. And basically, they want to start having reserves in bitcoins, or he's proposing, the senator is proposing now. What do you think about that?
Hmm. Okay. That gives me. There are two sides to that for me. One is I was looking at the size of what is being proposed, about $68 billion, if that goes through. And part of the uses is it will only be spent, in paying down uh, U.S. Debt.
Yeah.
And then I just went to look at the size of the US debt. Currently, it's about $35 trillion. And I was saying to myself, how really altruistic is this
Really?
move? Um, we know that the size of Bitcoin or the mining of Bitcoin is finite, about 21 million units, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this will take about 5%. So I then go back to simple economics. Uh, Supply is limited.
Mm-hmm.
You want to take part of, add yourself to the demand, and you are the biggest economy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying to myself, are there no proponents of Bitcoin behind this?
You see?
So then I'm saying to myself, come on, we can see behind this, or I can see behind this. So I don't know if the people in that space will agree with me. Of course, they want this to happen. Of the digits of days. So yeah, I think that there's more to it, more from a commercial standpoint of people behind it than for the
Yeah,
country as a whole.
I totally agree. In fact, I also do think that there's a point where, if you look at the part where there have been some prosecutions in the Bitcoin space, it's almost like they're trying to bring cryptocurrencies into mainstream. But there's also the
Yeah,
part where after this proposal, someone might just be using it to get attention and make his name known because it has to go through like many stages. But the thing that we all agree is that if they actually agree to this, like sign this, like Bitcoin to the moon, that's just it. So, would you buy? Are you in the Bitcoin market right now? Are you there, Tony? Can you hear me? Ah, Tony, can you hear me? I'm not sure if Tony can hear me. Tony, if you can hear me, and if you are listening in, please can you just say hi in the chat so I'm sure that I'm live? Because say hi in the chat if you are listening in. Okay, Tony, I see you now. You're back.
okay.
Could you
Yeah,
hear
okay.
me? Okay, so I
Yeah,
was asking.
it stopped, it
Okay.
froze at the point where you said there's also the part where I think it's
Oh,
frozen again.
so I'm now not sure if it's my internet or yours. But basically, I was saying that there's a point where for Bitcoin buyers, right? For Bitcoin investors, there's a point where if they actually pass it, it's Bitcoin to the world, right? But then it's going to go through
Yeah.
many stages. So you won't necessarily make a purchase on the back of this announcement. It's almost like you have to track it to see how far it goes before you decide, okay, Bitcoin to the world or no. But yeah, that's it's quite interesting news, I dare say. But I also dare say that digital assets are here to stay, some way or the other. So if you're not thinking about it,
Yeah.
think about how to get into that space because digital assets are here to stay. And the next one is Crowdstrike was sued by shareholders over global outage. Um, I thought this was quite interesting, but let me hear your thoughts around it.
America is such an interesting place.
It is. It is.
America
It
is an
is.
interesting place. I mean, I was trying to dissect that news. The owners of the business are the shareholders, right? They
Exactly. So who
appointed
are you
they
suing?
appointed management to, run the business on their behalf, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So what I think the shareholders are doing is that they are being clever by half, right? So because there's been losses for businesses that are customers, and they foresee that there will be, legal cases, and they can see clearly that those cases will see the light of day.
They
So it's a case of, uh, front loading that, jumping in, take what they can take out because the company may be wiped out. By the time
wow.
those claims come in, that's the way I've interpreted it, because it's your company, you own it. The most you can do is, take out
Hire
management and
somebody.
replace them. So if
Exactly.
you want to take value out from the business in terms of
Like I
Delta is
totally
also planning an action against the company, Delta. So, and if Delta Airlines puts that on the table, I expect to see a lot more line.
no, Tony has dropped off, but what Tony was saying is very valid because the understanding of investment is that you are okay, you're back again. I think it's your internet in
Okay.
Nigeria. Ah,
Yeah. So like I said, Delta Airline is lining up to file a suit against the company, and I also expect there will be other claimants that will line up. So if all of them, come on stream, and they are able to and they succeed, which they will likely, they will
have a
likely succeed, right?
yes.
So case of a sum total of all of those, you don't know what that number will be, could wipe out, the entire
The
value from the
company
business. So shareholders decide to say, okay, you know what, let's take what we can take out before they come.
before
That's the
before
way
they
I see
come.
it.
Yes, because I mean that makes sense, right? But I'll be really curious to understand what they are thinking because you can't be suing yourself. And I guess sometimes also, I mean, you almost can't assume that people are technical because there are some shareholders that are just shareholders and they are just fighting shareholders and all they do is fight. Because if those kind of people, they
Yeah.
might not really understand that they are owners of the business and you can't be suing yourself. Do you get?
Well, you see, this is where they say the law is an ass. The reason behind incorporation is to separate you from the business. So
From
you
the
are two different entities. So
separate legal
when they
entity.
bring that technicality into it, they probably will tell you that I can sue because we are two different people.
The lawyer has connected contracts now. What do you think? Somebody is making money here, regardless of the situation. But yeah, that's quite interesting. So we move on to African news now. In Africa, um, what's it called?
No, it's
Ethiopia.
not helping at all.
Sorry, Nigerians. African news. The World Bank approves 1.5 billion in financing for Ethiopia. What do you think about that?
Hmm. So, with Ethiopia, first it's Zambia, there is Ghana, there is Nigeria, there is Ethiopia. Uh, I mean, South
There's
Africa didn't
Kenya.
exactly go. There's Kenya. You know, is the and for those in the individual countries who are pushing for one thing or the other, I think sometimes we may need to do a bit of a broader view. why is this the case? Global inflation, Africa being at the short end of the stick and having to bear the brunt eventually, because of course the world is not only financialized, but financialized, but you have dollar being the de facto currency
Parents
for
of the world.
all of those things. So you find that this because the even the I'm sure we will get there. You find that the issues are the same, right? The same sort of issues that you have across. So now Ethiopia has had to float its currency, the bill, and then take this out of a further 6 billion is coming, and a total of think about 10 billion, not over a number of years, but the issues are the same. Africa is pretty much extractive, and getting funding to get it industrialized is a problem. All right.
The problem.
That's where the challenge is, in my opinion. Getting, being able to move from being a purely extractive environment to an industrial environment is where the problem is. Of course, the advanced economy is not exactly going to hand it to you,
Fund you.
and that's where the
Exactly.
challenge is,
Mm,
in my
mm.
opinion. So what I really don't know. I think we just, it looks like a rat race. We go back 70s, go back 80s, the 90s. Once there's a problem in the advanced economies, and they're having to get out of that
Pull
by
back.
raising
Hmm.
rates, dealing with high inflation. And because we're import dependent, we just pretty much buy those things.
Exactly.
And we then, and of course, the dislocations in the way our economies are, which I've spoken to earlier, it's purely, predominantly extractive,
That's
sadly.
a major issue, sadly. And I mean, the reason why we highlighted it is because, one, people sometimes think that issues are theirs alone, um, and but sometimes also to be aware that these things are happening, and that in your positioning as individuals, you should also find a way to break out of it because it's a cycle. It's a cycle and it's prevalent across Africa. And whether some people are in the news or not, the same thing is happening everywhere, right? And that's one. And I also, from an investor perspective, it also means that, because I mean, you've said that major issues that we don't have capital to pull Africa into what it should be. It also means that if you are of African descent, or if you're an African in diaspora, if you are a Nigerian or South African or a Kenyan, as you are thinking of buying that property or doing an investment abroad, you should also find ways to develop some sector, pull money together, which is what we do in the club really. Pull money together, find something that is uniquely ours and push it out there to the world. Nobody's going to do it for us. If not, we will be here when we're in our 80s, we'll still be saying the same thing. And we'll say, oh, we've seen it before, we know what's going to happen. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we will just walk into it again. And also, that's really why we highlighted it. Maybe Africans really need to start investing in Africa, which we've done in the club, which we do. So you want to join us? I'll put the link to join us on the lines below for you to see. Now, next is Ghana court bans planned protest against the cost of living. I saw this and I laughed, and I think it just like is a good flow from what I just said. Same thing happening everywhere. So over to you, Tony. Are you there, Tony? Uh-oh. Hi, Tony. Okay, you're back. Tony, can you hear me? Tony, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you and see you too. Are you there? Okay, so let me even start with that one. If you are, I mean, Kenya is still protesting. Um, Kenya tried the same thing. the try to get the courts to stop people from protesting, which is in a democratic situation your legal right. Um, Tony's trying to get back in. Okay, Tony's back again. Okay, so
Yeah,
Tony, over to you.
try to
Ghana.
change my network provider. Hopefully that would
Okay,
help.
that works. Okay, okay. So I was
Okay.
talking about Ghana. Go ahead.
About Ghana, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I'm getting a bit worried.
Uh-oh. He said he's getting a bit worried. I'm curious to hear what is worrying him. But I mean, while we're at it, let me talk about the club. Um, Hi, if you're just joining us. Um, you state where your name and where you're coming from. Tony is back again, and this is a link to the Money Meet Club. Okay, tell us what you're worried about. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so go ahead. You said
Okay.
you were worried.
I guess both of them have got the same issues.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
I don't know if I should go back to
go
the
on. No,
earlier
go
one.
on.
It
Go on.
looks
You're talking
like they all
about
have
your
the same
worry.
issues.
No, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my worry stems from the fact that what we are having is probably maybe on a smaller scale, our own version of the Arab Spring. All right,
Mm,
where from country to country there seems to be a wave, and the actions and events in one
I see where Tony is coming from, but his network is not allowing us to hear him fully. So yeah, he has a point. Really, the actions of one country are triggering responses, and we see that Um, Kenya started off a protest. I guess that's what you want to talk about, Tony. Are you back?
yeah, okay. So like I said, I'm a bit worried because it's like
Mm,
one geographical location, Africa. And why that worries me is I then take a look back at the Arab Spring and how that engulfed the Gulf region. I think it was only the UAE and Saudi Arabia that survived it. Every other part of that entire region was engulfed. And that's the thing about the world being linked. And like we explained when we're talking about uh, Ethiopia just some minutes ago, these events are a part of a broader problem, a broader
problem.
issue, and are not particularly situated to one country. And it's that understanding. But having said that, I think also politicians need to understand that you need to strike a balance, especially ostentatious lifestyle in the face of you know
Poverty.
like it is in this case. It's going to be difficult being able to explain to people and get their sympathy or their buy-in, because you as the political empathy. I don't know if you can even hear me
Yes, I can hear
because
you.
I
Go
can
ahead.
see here that connect.
I can hear you. And these are somewhat part of the rumored
Oh,
issues. I could hear you, Tony. So, can you hear me, Tony? Oh, it's so sad. I really wanted to hear Tony, but I think he does have a point. The reality is that when you are pushing out so much affluence in the midst of abject poverty, it is quite triggering. It actually is quite triggering. When there seems to be a disconnect, um, and then you now come and do things like increase taxes. when people are suffering and almost like you want to keep flogging them. It's actually quite insensitive. And when people get to a point where they
Yeah,
feel like they have nothing to lose, then they actually have nothing to lose because, I mean, you are the one with the car. You have a life, you have a future. But someone says, okay, I'm going to be hungry. I can't guarantee where I'll be in a month's time or, by the end of the year. So why not if not? And that is something that
yeah.
as a society, we always need to avoid, right? We always need to avoid because social unrest does nothing to help the economy. In fact, it pushes us further away from where we are attempting to go or even
Yeah.
claiming to go and all. But yeah, over to you, Tony.
I mean, you've captured where I was going to land, where I was talking about managers of the economy, politicians needing to read the room. You cannot be living ostentatiously in the middle of all of this lack that is staring people in the face, and that's where I think the major issue is. We know that a larger part of these issues are not because of what anybody has done currently. They are, they are a sort of accumulation of bad behaviors, bad decisions in the past that have then culminated into where we found ourselves. But I also still think that, uh, politicians haven't exactly read the room to say we need to recalibrate and uh, do things a bit differently, especially around this time.
Mm,
We will need to. I mean, I see a bit of easing when the US begins to lower
the
rates.
worry.
When the Fed, begins to lower rate, and then you see direction of flow of capital, and there will be a respite. But it's the sad reality about how the world is linked. Uh,
Very valid, and very unfortunate. And to our last news, really, it's almost the same thing as Ghana, really. Nigeria is on mini lockdown. Mini lockdown on
yeah,
the back of this same situation. I think for me, what I wanted us to analyze is more about the economic impact, um,
economic
short
impact.
term,
Yeah,
long term.
yeah.
Yeah, so maybe you can just speak to that.
Well, I mean, I'm sure data aggregators and analysts will give us figures. I mean, some of them will be wild figures. Some of them will be somewhat, real in terms of what the losses and potential losses are. And the fact that you can't, these activities will have to, be credit to the cult or to, or to very minimum in a situation where we do not have, it has its own implications. And then on top of that, destruction of public properties,
Property.
further heightens the issues that, I unfortunately, we can say this as educated people, as elites, if you like, about, don't do this. But like you mentioned before, a hungry person is just, one push away from angry and, being delusional. Because the reality, what I always say is this: for every government property that you destroy, you create an opportunity for more to be stolen. And I explain what I mean by that. You bring down a building or an asset of government, in replacing that same asset, contracts will be awarded.
Our contracts.
They'll, and for those fresh contracts, it means additional payment to whoever it is that's going to do it. If they have a culture of padding, then they will pad that same one. So while you think you are renting, you are creating an avenue for this to be
For loss of
looted all over again.
capital.
So really,
Exactly.
I think for those who are proponents of it, we need to think, to go back and think about what other options are available, because at the end of the day, the Commonwealth will be further depleted when you do this.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. You break down build, burn down, build, and all that, they will be replaced. And it is contracts, right? We know how it is with every government all over the world. There will be additional whatever attached to those who will make money from it. So we need to think about the implication of that,
Mm.
for the
Yeah,
Commonwealth.
unfortunately, you are speaking English. The person that is hungry feels like looking at someone by doing that. And I think also the part around awareness, influence, and using our influence when things are calm to get people to see things when things are calm. Because if someone already understands how this property actually is their heritage, um, in times of stress or pressure, they would actually be looking for what to actually hurt the person they are trying to hurt, not
Protect it.
and protect the things that are theirs, right? So if that orientation is not there when things are calm, you almost can't call on it when things are people are under pressure, people are hungry, right? But then this is for me, and it's bittersweet because the people that will still suffer from this, even without destruction of property, are the people that live from hand to mouth. The bus driver that needs to go out every day to make ends meet for him to
Yeah,
eat and to feed his family. What happens in that situation? And it's quite unfortunate. But I mean, really, the call is if you are either in government or if you have uncles and aunties, and just beg them small. Let's try and rearrange this thing. And there are real human beings attached to it. And I always say that economics is both a science and an art. Science because it's mathematics, it's plus and minus, but an art because it affects real human beings. And so with all your
yeah,
mathematics, if you overdo it, right, a real human being will be affected, and social issues are the worst for any economy. Social unrest is the worst thing. Like
yeah,
nobody
yeah.
benefits from it. Nobody. Even if the government is trying to attract foreign investors, your
Nobody.
country is on lockdown. Like who's gonna come, right? They're gonna pass on stuff. So it affects everyone. And so if you have those uncles, that are driving the big cars and you're scoping the cars and hailing them, hail them and talk to them too. And on this note, we come to an end. Thank you so much, Tony. This was a very insightful session. I always love having you. Had you before, and it was trended. Our professor in the house. And yes, Tony also is a member of the Money with Club. Let me put the link to the Money with Club if you've not heard about it. We do this every Saturday, 9 a.m. West African time. As you can share with your friends. Thank you so much, Tony, and have a beautiful weekend.
You too. Thank you for having me, and good morning, everyone.
Yeah, bye.